Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Great to have you with us on the program today. A retired university professor, Harry Kelly, is an artist, photographer, world traveler, atheist, and an advocate for racial equality and gay rights. He has a bachelor's degree in art and design and a master's degree in art education from the University of Florida. Received his doctorate in art and education from Peabody College. He's lectured and exhibited in Denmark, Brazil, and China. In his new autobiography, Cosmos Screen, Harry uses his life story to reflect on contemporary issues of race, religion, homophobia, poverty, education, international perspectives, and influential people. And author Harry Kelly with us on This Week in America. Harry, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us on the show today.
Thank you. I'm good to have you doing it.
You know, the autobiography is fascinating. We sort of share the journey through your life, which started back in early memories in 1930. This is growing up in a sharecropper family going through the Depression and World War II. You start the book, and you've got a quote in there from the prophet that says, "These things he said in words, but much in his heart remained unsaid, for he himself could not speak deeper secret." Talk about why you had that in the beginning of the book and the significance that those words play on your life as well.
Well, I was searching for answers to questions, and they are hard to come by. And then I realized that some of them I'm not supposed to know anyway, so that prompted me to quote that.
That's interesting, and the perspective, and you sort of keep that in mind as you're reading the book. The book is the autobiography by Harry Kelly called Cosmos Screen. His website is cosmosscreen.wordpress.com. You, of course, can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to Perry's website. The book is available at Amazon and other outlets. Let's go back and talk at the beginning here. First of all, Cosmos Screen. Talk about the significance of that. That really, as you pointed out in the book, that was one of the earliest things that you remember in your life.
Well, when I was thinking about writing in my autobiography, I thought, first of all, about where I was born, as most of us do, you know. And then I tried to write a page or two, and it didn't come. And so one night, a friend of mine suggested that you have to start with what you know. And that was the key to my changing the whole approach. So I then thought about, well, what do I know? I don't know anything before 5 years old. And so I changed that approach to that. And in Alabama, the flowers grow abundantly. And we had a bunch of the cosmos flowers in the edge of the yard. And my mother was very attentive to those flowers. And so then I got to think about, well, they grow like a screen. They're tall and wavy and flowering. And so then I said, well, that's a good start. I know that. And then I said, then I can go back and put something in about the family. So I just started writing, and it just flowed. And then after a while, I changed focus to write about what was behind that screen before I knew anything about me.
And that's so interesting. The Cosmos Screen is the name of the autobiography. You were raised in the rural South Alabama. The memories you talk about here go back to 1930 in a sharecropper family. Talk about that, because poverty was really what dictated your early years, wasn't it?
You say it was dictated?
Yeah, with poverty really was prevalent in your early years. Talk about the family life, and let's talk about being the one of the children in a sharecropper's family and poverty. And I know that's something that you fought all of your life. That's been in the back of your mind and limited you in your early years. Talk about that poverty, the impact it had on the family as you were growing up.
Okay, my family came from Ireland, Scotland, and to escape the famine there, and they settled on the east coast of America, and then moved into Alabama. My great-grandfather was killed in the Civil War in Alabama. Then his son, my grandfather, was married and had a child or two, and then moved to Florida because of the boom down there, and then that began to fade out, and my grandfather was a preacher, so he found a church up in Georgia, near Albany, Georgia, and he moved all of us up there, except my father. My father went back to Alabama where we had relatives, and had a disaster there trying to farm in that soil. And then we moved across to Georgia because my grandmother had died, and my grandfather had married a neighbor, and he didn't need the house. And so we were able to get a very nice house on plantation, and we all moved over there. At that time, there was 5 children.
Yeah, and it was a difficult childhood. Talk about, in the book, Cosmos Screen, you talk about your mother's health and the diet she was on, and losing some siblings. Talk about, and her early death, talk about that impact on you and the family, your mother's health and dying at a very early age.
Well, there was certainly a sparsity of doctors at the time, but fortunately they were amenable to travel out in the countryside to treat us. And we had that kind of a treatment for my mother and my brother and my father. And then when my mother was taken ill, I was only about 2nd grade, I think. I lost my point there.
Well, yeah, we were talking about the early death of your mother and the fact that that had such an impact on you as well as other family members. Perry Kelly is our guest on This Week in America. His autobiography is called Cosmos Screen. Perry's website is cosmosscreen.wordpress.com. Dealing with a number of contemporary issues, issues that Perry was dealing with back in the 1930s as he was going through his life and up currently. Let's talk about going through the Great Depression and what an impact as well that had on you. This started as a sharecropper family member, and then the Great Depression, World War II. Talk about the Great Depression and how difficult that was and how you were able to survive.
It was difficult on all of us. For instance, I had to get up every morning and milk a cow. My brother had to milk the other cow and things like that before we would go to school. Then the hogs had to be tended to, the horses and the cows. So that's from between daylight and dark.
Yes.
And so we had that kind of duties, and that was good for us. I think we learned to take responsibility and do our duties. But I found here, talking to students in the university here, and in fact, much older students who didn't know what sharecropping was and how arduous it was and how it is binding the person to the person. Because if you owe somebody something, you're not willing to just move off somewhere else,
Yes.
And I met that same thing in Denmark when I was there. That Denmark was a country of big farms, mostly owned by Europeans, and so when the idea of a national identity came along, they started folk schools to train kids in different trades and everything, and that was a wonderful experience. And they then began to identify themselves as Danes. And so I began to identify myself as an American here,
That, yes.
I no longer belong to that peanut farm.
Well, all that international travel really gives you a unique perspective, and you get that perspective in Perry's autobiography, Cosmos Screen. That's COSMOS Screen. Website is cosmosscreen.wordpress.com. Traveling to 46 countries, you also taught geography. But before I get to that, let's go back and talk about age 18. You leave home, and you're struggling. You're almost leading a separate life. a secret life as you're going through struggling with sexual identity. Talk about that, because, boy, I'm sure back in that period of time, that's really not something you had open discussions about.
Well, first of all, my idea of being independent of the family and the sharecropping farm situation permeates the other things that I do and have done during my life to be independent as much as possible. And I found that paid off. And let me tell you, Rick, at first, when I started writing the book, I did not identify these themes that run through the book. They emerged as I wrote. And then one night I was writing, and I thought, well, look at this. This thing has some themes going right down my alley here. And so that was a good thing for me to latch on to.
Yes, and it's something that you address from an analytical perspective. All of the different issues, the themes, many we talked about: family, people who aided you, security, education, companionship, sexual orientation that we just touched on, the international perspective, and religion. Getting back to that poverty, and it's something that you write about frequently throughout the book, Cosmos Screen, the opportunities denied to you by poverty. And one thing you do in wrapping up the book is hoping people are not held back by that anymore. Are we making progress in that to allow people to flourish, to follow their dreams?
Well, when I got into these themes, I found that poverty was the basis for all of it.
Yes.
If you're in poverty, you're in debt to everybody. And so then I wonder, how does that affect my education? Well, if you're in poverty, you don't have books and movies and things for educational materials, or the best of teachers and things like that. And then if you grow up and trying to make a career for yourself, poverty plays a role there because you haven't had experiences to warrant the job that you're looking for, and things of that sort.
And it's interesting. We've touched on education, and I mentioned the degrees that you have, and you taught, and you've traveled the country, basically teaching in other countries. Education you referred to as sort of the liberating force in your life. That really turned your life around, didn't it? That quest for knowledge.
Well, I can tell you how it got turned around. After my mother died, my father married again. My stepmother had a high school education from Dothan, Alabama. Well, I thought that was great. I really did. At that age, I thought that was great. And my oldest brother finally graduated from high school, so I thought that was good on him. And it became a kind of a goal for me to outdo my stepmother, for goodness sakes, And so when that was how it got started. I didn't know where to stop.
Well, boy, that's for sure. The multiple degrees, teaching in senior high school, geography, then teaching art education, getting a doctorate in 1965. Let's talk a bit. It's interesting as I'm reading the book with geography and your approach to geography. You thought there were a lot of things lacking in the textbooks at the time, and you focused on human geography rather than physical geography. As I'm reading that, I'm thinking that makes so much sense because it makes the world a smaller place and gives us a better understanding. When we're talking about Denmark and Russia and China, it gives us an idea of what we're talking about rather than just defining it by mountain ranges. Talk about human geography and why that approach was so important to you and why it was so successful.
Well, I certainly did not intend to teach geography. I never thought about it. I had an interest in countries and names and things like that, but that's all. But anyway, when I went for my first job after I graduated from the University of Florida and learned that I was going to teach world geography and art, that hit me in the face. I thought, well, that's a wake-up call. And my roommate had to teach math and art. So I said, well, at least I'm better off than he is. And so I went to the classroom and got the textbook and began to read it. And that whole year, I kept one chapter ahead of the students all year, and just trying to keep up. And I thought, this is not the way to teach, and I can understand that. And you'd have one student who couldn't read the book. You'd have another one who couldn't understand some things in it, and others who just hated the book. So the next year, I asked the principal to let me have at least 3 different textbooks, and he agreed, and I made a change in that whole curriculum just by that one suggestion.
And probably made the topic of geography so much more interesting and meaningful to the students that you had. We've got a couple minutes left in the program. You're listening to This Week in America. Our website is thisweekinamerica.us. By going there, you can link on directly to our guest website. Our guest is Perry Kelly. His book is called An Autobiography is Cosmos Screen. Cosmoscreen.wordpress.com is the website. It picks up with his first recollections back in 1930, going through the Great Depression, World War II, the college years, his professional development, traveling to 46 different countries. A couple minutes left in the program, and you're talking in the book about your mother at one point made you to the admonishment, always leave a place in people in better condition than you find them. And it sounds like during your life you actually were able to touch people's lives and to do that.
Well, I don't know how I got a lot of it done, to be honest with you.
You've accomplished so much, and in fact, you say in looking back on your life, and I have a feeling that you say it's still evolving, and I'm sure that it still is for you. It's still a work in progress, but you describe your life as amazing as you look back on it. It really was a very productive and meaningful life, hasn't it been?
Well, I as I say, I started teaching art and world geography, and the second year, by changing the textbooks and my approach to it, changed the whole curriculum of world geography, for as I'm concerned. And I never thought about it as being a study of where people live,
Yes.
How they make a living, things like that. And that made it more interesting. And I found that I could ask students in the class to point to the north, and they had no idea where north was, things like that. And so I thought, well, they're not getting what they need.
Well, it really changed a number of lives. And a minute or so left in the program, gone by way too quickly. Perry Kelly is our guest on the program, author of his autobiography, Cosmos Screen, and a journey through his life, beginning with his earliest recollections in 1930. It's interesting. You talk about bias and prejudice grounded in a lack of knowledge. Are we making any progress on that? You went through, and we touched on the sexual orientation issues that you went through. You grew up in the South with a very conservative fundamentalist family. You've seen the racial issues there. Are we making any progress, do you feel?
Well, I can tell you one thing that I can honestly report, that homophobia is much more difficult than homosexuality itself. I know that for sure.
Yes.
And the purges we went through and things like that, they're just awful. And but
Well, and
I didn't mean for that to be a big issue in the thing. It was one of 7 issues that I addressed, and I try to make it an issue whereby education could solve some of the problems, you see.
Yeah, and you address inadequacies in education, contributing and restricting development of healthy lives, and you talk about that. It really is an excellent reflection on the generations that Perry Kelly has lived. Perry Kelly, our guest on the program, that's Kelly. The book is called Cosmos Screen, Cosmos, Cosmos Screen. His website is cosmoscreen.wordpress.com. There's a blog there, a lot of great information on the book. And of course, you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to Perry's website. Perry, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. There are so many interesting topics in the book, the 7 themes that you fully developed there. And I'm still impressed with what you did in basically revolutionizing how geography was. I wish you had been my teacher in geography. I might have learned a little bit more going through that a number of years ago. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. Congratulations on an excellent book, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
You're certainly welcome. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Same here. Once again, Perry Kelly, our guest on the program. The autobiography is called Cosmos Screen. You can get all the information and link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us.